Good afternoon. This is Avraham Shira from Eretz Israel. Today we're going to present a series of stages of a miracle, the miracle of Hanukah, but it's really the miracle of all freedom when we understand how these levels of miracles interweave with our everyday life. So we have this very well-known prayer that we say on Hanukkah in our davening and also in our we bless over food. It's the same thing we say for the Purim story. Al hanisim, v'al purkan, v'al gevorot, v'al tishuot, v'al ha-niflaot, v'al ha-nechamot. 6 levels, and each word is a conceptual place, a conceptual step on a staircase to true freedom. I'm not talking about temporary freedom. I'm talking about freedom of the human being from his situation in a world that is kind of like trying to trap us here and surround us with its physicality and its materiality and its values. And we are not from here, folks. We are visiting here. And every time, we lose somebody. We've lost a couple of rabbis this week here in Gush Etzion. It's kind of sad, but it's part of life, of course. But each time that happens, it reminds us of our transient nature. But Hanukkah is above time, and that's because it comes back every year at this time, and it's not because of the calendar. The calendar, the Jewish calendar, is a map of the flow of energy in the world on a yearly cycle. The Jewish calendar reflects the ups and the downs in our spiritual fate. Our destiny changes as the year changes. And so too, as the festivals come and go, whether they're the festivals from the Bible itself or the festivals that were added afterwards. So let's look at these 6 levels, these 6 stages of the miraculous process that takes us to true freedom. The first, ala nisim, well, what is a nes? A nes is a complete change in nature. Now, there are different types of miracles. Some miracles don't change nature. They warp it. They stretch it. Like the miracle of the oil burning for 8 days. Well, oil burns. That's no miracle. That's a natural law, right, that we are very familiar with. But a certain amount of oil burns according to the wick, according to the amount of oil, the density of the oil, etc. But in the Beit Mikdash, when they found this little pach of holy oil, not just oil that they could use for a bread offering or a mincha, it's called, or the oil they use for regular eating, for all that matter, which is chulin, which is not sanctified, but the oil that was only used for the anointing of the Kohen or the king, the special oil that is preserved only for those special events in the Jewish life cycle, anointing kings and priests. So this is the oil they found. This is a very special oil, but it was only enough for a day and it lasted 8 days. So what's the miracle is the stretching of time. That's one type of miracle. Another type of miracle, nisim, is where something very natural happens right when you need it. That's another miracle in time, right? Where you have something you have to pay, a bill is due, they're breathing down your neck, and all of a sudden the money just shows up out of nowhere. That's a miracle in time. It's a synchronicity between the outer and the inner world. So that's another type of miracle. So this type of miracle, the first miracle though, is a change in nature. Now when we're talking about oppression, slavery, and all the things that go with that, the first thing that the slave needs is a change in his mindset and a change in his attitude about himself. That is an internal miracle, to suddenly decide I am not a slave. I was not born to be a slave. I will not continue to be a slave. I will fight for my freedom to the last drop of blood, the last breath in my lungs because I am from freedom. I am made from divine freedom. I was created to be free. And if other human beings don't get that, well, then we're going to have to do something about it. So the first miracle, Al HaNisim, is the miracle in the change in the mindset of the Jews in Egypt. And that wasn't easy. You had to send a guy like Moses to do all these other miracles, which we're going to get to, which are called ot. They're called signs and wonders and niflaot. These are all subtle distinctions in the idea of miracle, right? But the first one we need is a change in nature, to change the idea that I am not a slave and I am going to fight for my freedom. That is a change in mindset, and that is a miraculous thing. And if you ask any addict, a person who's addicted to something, they'll tell you they had to go through an inner change before the outer world would change after them. Okay, the next level, porkan. Porkan is from the Lashon lifrok. It means, when you do business with donkeys and horses, you put stuff on their back, and then you go into the place where you're selling, and you forek the ol. You break off the load that's on the back of your donkey. So this is another level of miracle. It's the breaking off the load of the burden of being somebody we don't want to be. The burden of being a slave, the burden of being attached to things that we don't want, the burden of oppressive people in our lives, or the burden of having a job you don't like. It's that breaking off the burden is the porkan. And that's another level of transformation within a person that becomes depicted in our outer life. So this removing the yoke, of course, the ultimate yoke is when one nation dominates another, enslaves another. As we've seen throughout human history, slavery is not a new idea, folks. It's been around for thousands and thousands of years, and it's taken a lot of suffering in the last 150 years for people to start to get the idea that it's not okay to enslave people. So, they changed the politics, and the politicians changed the laws, so people with a lot of money find other ways to enslave. They say, I'll pay you room and board. I'll give you a house and food if you work for me. And then all of a sudden at the end of the month, they say, oh, you didn't work enough to pay for your room and board. Now you owe me, right? That's what they did to the slaves in the American South. And I'm sure they've done it in other countries. Of course, the ancient concept of slave is you attack a nation, take people captive, enslave them, and put them to work for you to build your great cities and palaces. But, okay, this type of porkan is to break that yoke, to break that servitude on our backs and also in our mind. Of course, the next level of Gevorot, the Gevorot that we needed is the courage to fight a battle that doesn't look very promising. Gevorot is the ability to jump into a battle even though the guy is twice your size and twice as armed, and he's got all the statistics are with him that he's going to defeat you in battle. Whether it's 100,000 men versus 10,000 men, the Jewish people faced battles like that, and they won them because of God's help. But the Gevorah is the power to jump into the battle even though it doesn't look good. I am going to fight no matter what. And I don't care about odds. And don't try to discourage me with your statistical observations. Because the Gevorah is a power from God that gives us this courage that we will prevail, we will win the fight. And of course the fight also is against this idea of doubt. The idea that, no, we can't do it, they're too strong, they're too powerful, because the Greeks were stronger than the Jews. They had more army, more soldiers. Most Jews didn't even have weapons, except what they dug their fields with, or what they plowed, and all the other farming implements that they had. That was their normal warfare. Tools. They didn't have big swords and lances, because they didn't need them most of the time. So, the Gevorah is the ability to go to war for a principle, for a divine purpose, for a divine reason, and to save the glory of God's name on God's people. Because when the Jews lose, everybody loses. Why? Because it makes God look bad. If the Jews don't win, then the world says, well, look, who is the Jewish God? Why is he so great? The Jews lost again. And that can't happen anymore. That's part of the redemption from exile, is the redemption from the idea that we're not losing, we're winning. Even if it doesn't look so good in the outer world and you can measure by many different parameters. But still, this is part of the next level also, which is the teshuot. The teshuot literally means to be saved from by a deliverer or by a group of deliverers from this oppressive nation. That it chiefly has to do with also causing the enemy to give up. See, there's a level where the enemy doesn't really want to fight. If you're a soldier in somebody else's army, and you really want to risk your life so that your general can inherit those 10,000 acres? Is that really why you want to fight? Is that why you want to go to Afghanistan to control some oil fields for some other huge international corporation? Is that why you want to go to Vietnam? So that you can take over some rice paddies and some rubber plantations and some copper mines? Is that why the American soldiers risked their life in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s? Were the Americans really fighting to save Kuwait from Saddam Hussein? Or were they looking to get another anchor in the Middle East and control more of the economics of the region? And of course, the international economics of oil. So the people, if a soldier looks at why he's fighting, most of the time, it's not going to be for the high-level reason that God sends Jews into battle. And the reason that God sends Jews into battle is for the making known that He is our God. Making people see that there is something above the laws of time and space and the laws of nature. And that's why the odds were against us in the Hanukkah story. Because that's the idea of Teshuot. And then we go into Niflaot, where are signs and wonders. Now, usually signs and wonders are things that, again, take nature and expand it. God took a little thing called a lice in Egypt, and He made so many of them that it was a wonder. A few lice. Everybody has lice. Anybody who has dogs has lice, right? But to make lice what it was in Egypt was completely beyond the normal realm of how we look at nature. And it's the same thing with other miracles that happened in the Egyptian story, right? The frogs. Suddenly there's too many frogs. The frogs are going in people's houses, jumping in, in the refrigerator. So the idea here of a miracle is not necessarily changing nature itself. It's creating a wonder or a sign to the Jewish people. You are going to be redeemed. You will be taken out of Egypt. Because remember, every miracle in Egypt took about a month from its beginning to its end, and before the next miracle started to happen. And it was a year-long process, those 10 plagues. Okay, so you see that the Jewish people needed to go through a slow transformation to become a free people, to really see that we are not slaves to Pharaoh. And the slaves are still around, folks, and so are the Pharaohs. And you just have to look a little closer. Okay, now, so when we look at those signs and wonders, in Hanukkah, well, we had this oil that burned a long time. We had the wonder that we challenged the Greeks enough to make them want to stop fighting. That is a wonder. Why should they want to stop fighting? Because they didn't really have the moral authority. They didn't have the spiritual conviction to fight to the death like the Jewish people were willing to fight to remove these people from our temple. And so this is also the type of wonder that you could easily say, it was not God. It was just, a change in someone's attitude. But that, we're saying, is really a big part of the whole process of achieving freedom. Now, part of the wonder is recognizing it. If you don't see your life as having wonders, then you won't see them. And if you see every little thing around you as a wonder, then you start to see wonders. So it's really about our camera, the way we film reality, the way we choose to frame our experience. If you have a horrible life and you hate what's happened to you, then I have to, the Kabbalah says you have to look at your previous lifetimes. You have to look at what I did before. And not in this existence, as another soul, as the same soul in another place. Now, a lot of people say, oh, come on, I'm not going to deal with reincarnation. I don't know what happened to me. But I know people that have done the work, and they have found out. And I know a good friend of mine who said, now I know why I'm crippled, because I did something bad in World War II. And so people, if they do the work and they're honest enough, they're really ready to hear the answers of why their life is so difficult, then if they're ready to hear the answer, then it might make sense to them and they'll have the acceptance. Because without the acceptance, life is a continuous struggle, a suffering, and a burden. It's a burden to get up in the morning, it's a burden to go to bed at night. Because we don't recognize the wonder, we don't recognize the fact that it's just a wondrous thing that everything even wants to live. It's a wondrous thing that the energy that's emitting from the sun keeps this planet radiated, and so on and so forth. It's all a wonder when you really see it that way, and that's the Talmud says that's the difference between the Avot and the Tanaim. The Avot believed that everything was a miracle. The Tanaim believed that God did miracles. But there's a big difference between believing that everything's a miracle and only believing in nature, but sometimes miracles happen. And that transformation is the difference between Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and a lot of the big rabbis from the later generations. So we have to check ourselves. What do I really believe? Let's be honest. How much is a miracle in my mind? Is it a miracle that my dog loves me? Maybe only because I feed him. Maybe because he likes me. I don't know. But the nature that animals care for each other is also miraculous. Because most animals don't care about each other. Most animals want to eat each other. And human beings, unfortunately, if we listen to our lower selves, well, Pirkei Avot tells us that a man will swallow his friend. No problem. So that's also the nature that needs to be changed, folks. And this has been going on for thousands of years. Again, now the last level of these 6 stages of the miraculous process to freedom is the comfort. The comfort, which is the nechamot. Nechamot is something that in the halakha it refers to when we go to visit somebody who is mourning for a dead relative. And the rabbis teach that when just visiting the sick removes 1/60th of their illness. In other words, the presence of another human being has the power to remove something of the suffering person's pain and anguish. And so too, when you visit someone who he might be healthy, but he's lost a parent or he's lost a loved one, lo aleinu, when that happens, another person's presence provides comfort. And what is that comfort? What actually takes place? You walk in the room, you don't say anything, really. The halakha is that we let them talk to us when the person's, visiting a person in mourning. He's sitting on the floor, his shirt is torn. What is the nechamat avelim? What is the actual comfort? That someone visited me? Well, that's nice. They care about me? It's even nicer. Or is it because somehow their soul and my soul get together for a moment and remove some of the pain, some of the grief, some of the fear that goes along with confronting death? So a lot of people are pretty courageous until they face death, until they actually experience it by a loved one, or they experience it, in a first-hand nature. A lot of soldiers, that I've met have seen people die in battle, and they're not the same. Dying in battle is not the same as, one of these rabbis didn't wake up one morning. He just died in his sleep, which is considered a divine way to pass away. So the comfort is that God gives us is about removing the pain of the slavery. It's that final transformation. It's that final miraculous process where I don't even feel like I was ever a slave. I don't feel the pain, the wounds. I don't see the scars. Where the comforting comes at the end of the story, and a person, walks into the sunset, he's not that slave anymore. And even the memories of slavery have diminished. And the impact of those memories is weaker. And the way we look at our history is changed. That's transformative and that's miraculous. And in therapy, that's called changing your narrative. Your narrative is the story of your life as you choose to tell it. And as a slave in Egypt or a slave in modern America or modern Israel or wherever you are, we have a choice. And that's the first part of the miracle. The wonder of the discovery that I have a choice, that I am not stuck, and that I go on from my choice, from the miracle of that to the miracle of removing the mass, the weight, the onus of the slavery that I've suffered, the weight that it's had on me all these years. And then, of course, there's the Gevorot, the willingness, the courage to fight the fight, no matter what, because it's a good fight, it's God's fight. And then, of course, there's the salvation that comes when the enemy decides they don't want to fight anymore, because it's not worth it to them. And then, of course, we have the niflaot, the wonders and the signs that we are going into complete freedom. And then the comforting when God removes all the pain of the past. And we emerge from Hanukah as a free people with our mikdash, with our temple, with our service, with our culture, with our people, with our Torah, with our laws, with our way of looking at the world. And it's not like we're egocentric or ethnocentric. We're God-centric. We just choose to put God in the center of the story. And everybody else wants to put God on Sunday afternoon or on Friday morning or wherever they choose to put their God. But Judaism puts God right in the center of everything in our life. And when you get to that level of recognition of the wonder that we have a God that's so close, that cares so much, and he suffers with us in exile, and he suffers our pain, and he suffers when we get hurt. But when we turn to him, miracles begin. And we should all be blessed with that miracle of Hanukah, the miracle of freedom from oppression, from slavery, from the inner oppression, from the outer subjugation of foreign powers, foreign cultures, foreign ideas. And we get to decide our own agenda. And we have some good sources to work from. So God bless you all. It should be a wonderful Shabbat. And we still have 3 full days of Hanukkah. And then we have Zot Hanukah, which is considered the final chance to seal the legal document that came out of heaven for each soul. We say that Zot Hanukah is the day of the sealing of our litigation with heaven. And it's a time of the last chance of the last chance. From Yom Kippur till the end of Hanukkah, the rabbis teach us the books are open, nothing's been put in the mail yet. So that's the end of Hanukkah. That'll be, I believe, Monday. I hope to be up in Meron at Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Perhaps we'll have a little talk from there. And I hope all of you experience that joy of the freedom of your true self. Because when you do, you'll realize that all of what we've been living from before was not really us. It wasn't the true self that we were born with and that we are meant to inherit. And we'll see you on all the outlets and all the platforms next week, as usual. And God bless you all. Have a great Shabbat. Hanukkah Sameach.